The anime starts in an old AV room where the protagonist, Fumiya Tomozaki, is playing a very popular video game called Attack Families, known as TACFAM, with his schoolmate Shuji Nakamura. Nakamura has a full life outside the game. He's popular, good-looking, excels in sports, and is good with girls. In contrast, the protagonist leads a loser's life, but he is the best TACFAM player in Japan. After they finish their game, Nakamura starts complaining about losing and blames his chosen character for being too weak, eventually calling the game trash. This annoys Tomozaki, who says it's poor sportsmanship to blame the game for losing. They decide to switch characters, and Tomozaki insists that if he wins, Nakamura must retract his statement. In the end, Fumiya wins. Later, Nakamura is about to go home but encounters two classmates, so they decide to go get something to drink. Meanwhile, Tomozaki heads home alone, thinking of life as a divine-level game, although he doesn't truly believe this. He feels discriminated against and poorly treated because of his appearance, leading him to think that life outside the game is trash. When he arrives home, he continues playing TACFAM and is surprised to be challenged by a player named No Name. Despite giving him a tough fight, No Name ultimately loses, but sends Tomozaki a message wanting to meet him. The next day, Tomozaki returns to school with the impression that rumors about his match against Nakamura in TACFAM are circulating, though he doesn't see anyone talking about it. Later, Aoi Hinami, a top student who excels academically in sports and is very beautiful, approaches him. She knows about the rumor and is curious about who won. Nakamura admits his defeat, but annoyed leaves with Hinami, leaving Tomozaki in shock. Over the weekend, Tomozaki is ready to meet No Name, wanting to find out what kind of person they are, only to discover that No Name is a woman. When the girl turns around, they are both surprised to learn each other's true identities. No Name is Hinami. She is shocked to see Fumiya, but is more disappointed to find out that the great player Nanashi is a loser in real life. She has a lot of respect for him, but is put off by his appearance, dirty shoes, wrinkled clothes, and unkempt hair. Although she decides to leave since she lost interest in discussing the game, Tomozaki stops her, saying that real life is unbalanced because there are no rules, making the game of life trash. He feels someone like him could never beat someone like her. Despite being always alone, he's fine with his solitary life, having fun in his own way, and asks her not to impose her values on him. Hanami tries to tell him that he shouldn't hate a rich life if he's never experienced it, and that he's just blaming the game for his loss, which should embarrass him as he needs to put in effort like in video games. The protagonist understands her perspective, but points out that in real life you can't change characters, so she asks him to accompany her. Later, Tomozaki finds himself at Hanami's house, not knowing how he got there. A girl arrives and tries to explain the situation, but it turns out to be his classmate, who shows that she can look different by removing her makeup and changing her outfit. Fumiya understands her point but knows he can't put on makeup. She tells him that a person's appearance is based on posture and expression, and that one can acquire communication and confidence skills with effort. She is disappointed that Nanashi wasn't the type of person she expected, but is willing to help him learn the rules of this game. Tomozaki acknowledges that everything his classmate says is true and accepts her proposal because as the best TACFAM player, he wants to give it a try. To do this, he first needs to change his appearance, as character creation is the first step in video games. Since his expressions are not good, she gives him a mask to practice his expressions underneath. The next day, the group meets in the sewing room, where she tells him he needs to have goals. His ultimate goal is to be satisfied with life, but first he needs to get someone close to ask if he has a girlfriend, then get a girlfriend before starting his third year. His first goal of the day is to talk to some girls at school. This makes the protagonist nervous as he feels everything began with high goals, but he knows Hinami asked with full confidence. After what happened, the protagonist needs to talk to 3 of his classmates as his first goal. Hinami suggested 2 of her friends, while the third is up to him. On his first attempt, he speaks with Yuzu Izumi, who sits next to him. He asks her for tissues, using his mask as an excuse. The girl kindly tells him she doesn't have any, but asks her other friend Kikuchi, who lends some to him. When Izumi leaves, Kikuchi notices Fumiya is smiling and asks why. The nervous protagonist makes an excuse, saying he's just making a face because his teeth hurt, which slightly disappoints Hinami, who overhears the conversation. Later, Tomozaki arrives at the next class and has the chance to talk to the second girl, Minami Nanami. He sees she's alone, but Hinami isn't around. He approaches her, and unexpectedly, the student starts the conversation as she arrives early. Fumiya imagines a confident response but realizes it would sound strange. He tries to talk about the girls, but she finds it so funny that she laughs heartily, leaving him confused because she speaks like an older person despite being young. Another girl, Tama, arrives and asks what's so funny. At that moment, Nakamura and his friends show up, and hearing that Fumiya is funny, Nakamura gets upset and demands to know the joke. Upon hearing the explanation for Nanami's laughter, Nakamura is disappointed and calls Nanami a weirdo. They start a vote to see who is weirder, with Nakamura's friends voting against Minami. while she votes against Nakamura as the protagonist doesn't want to get involved. However, Hinami appears to help her friend and begins to tease Shuji about losing to Tomozaki in TACFM. All the students are surprised and start laughing, leading Nakamura to challenge the protagonist to a rematch. Later, Tama thanks Hinami for helping them, and Tomozaki also expresses his gratitude. Hinami mentions that she was there the whole time and heard the conversations, finding him amusing. Tomozaki still doesn't understand what was funny, and Nanami also says she had fun. She then asks the protagonist to call her Mimimi, a name only a few people use, while Tama doesn't mind how she's addressed, though her real name is Hanabi Natsubayashi. After classes, the group gathers and Hinami tells the protagonist that Nakamura still holds a grudge for losing to him, which could be a significant obstacle if they want to achieve their final goal. Despite this, she feels it was a productive day as he managed to handle himself a bit in home economics class, though the other classes were a failure, so they need to keep practicing. The next step is to work on his posture. The following day, Hinami corrects Tomozaki's posture and tells him he must maintain it at all times as part of the day's task, in addition to having conversations with her and someone else. After classes, Hinami heads home with Nanami and her friends, and the protagonist follows as he needs to keep practicing. During their conversation, Fumiya asks a strange question and his friend tries to help him. When they part ways, Fumiya continues his journey with Mimimi. By his friend's order, he must attempt to maintain a conversation, which seems to work as she is very cheerful. However, she is curious about what's going on between him and his friend since they spend a lot of time together, but accepts that they are just friends despite their differences. On the next school day, Hinami congratulates the protagonist for maintaining a conversation with her friend, noting that it's because she fits into any group, whereas Tama is the opposite as she speaks her mind. In groups, there is usually someone who starts a conversation and another who expands on it. Hinami gives him the task of testing these two roles and provides notes as a guide, along with a recorder so he can listen to his voice. She also mentions that they will spend the entire Saturday together. After a few days, Saturday arrives and the group meets up for the day. Hinami is surprised and praises the protagonist for dressing appropriately for an outing, although he still has no idea what she has planned. Later, they arrive at the mall, where Hinami says the task for the day is to change the young man's appearance. They head to a clothing store where Tomozaki must choose an outfit on his own. The girl approves his choice, but the issue now is that he needs to ask the store employees for it. Due to his shyness, he ends up losing the mannequin. Later, they take a break to have lunch before heading to a hair salon. When it's time to order, Hinami chooses the food because she likes cheese. The protagonist mentions that he was listening to the recorder and notices he tends to mumble a lot, which she confirms. Due to this, he doesn't usually use facial expressions or gestures, so his new task is to do so to convey his emotions. While they are working on this new task, the waitress arrives with their food, and it turns out to be Kikuchi, who is surprised to see Tomozaki, not noticing Hinami's presence. Kikuchi says she didn't expect them to be friends but lets them enjoy their lunch. After Kikuchi leaves, Hinami suggests that Tomozaki's classmate could become his girlfriend. She had some doubts, but the previous situation confirmed her suspicions. The young man isn't very convinced, but Hinami explains that when he asked for tissues, Kikuchi had them ready before Izumi asked. She was surprised to see him and mentioned his name but not the girl's, leading Hinami to believe Kikuchi likes him. Tomozaki feels that doing this would be dishonest, but agrees since he decided to play the game of real life. The next day, Tomozaki arrives at the sewing room where he meets Hinami. He's excited because he achieved one of his goals. A family member asked if he has a girlfriend, as his younger sister asked a similar question, seeing his change. Hinami agrees that he might have achieved this and congratulates him, but she sets another goal: to go out with a girl who is not her and to speak with Izumi twice a day. The protagonist doesn't understand why it has to be her if Kikuchi was supposed to be his girlfriend, but Hinami believes talking to other girls besides Kikuchi will level him up. Later, he starts his task by trying to maintain a conversation with Izumi. However, their conversation doesn't go far as they discuss homework, and he can't manage to do it even after class. Hinami tells him to keep trying the next day and for the rest of the week. So as the new week starts, he continues practicing and attempting to hold a conversation, finding it difficult. Hinami advises him to talk about people's clothing or expressions. While the protagonist is in the library thinking about his tasks, Kikuchi appears, having seen him reading a book she likes. She believes they have something in common, but in reality, he picked up the book without thinking because he's focused on his task. Noticing her enthusiasm, he decides to go along with it. Once Kikuchi feels more comfortable, she confesses she is writing a novel and would like his opinion, asking him not to tell anyone. When she leaves, she says a line from the book, and luckily, Fumiya responds correctly as it was written in it. Later, the protagonist meets with Hinami and tells her what happened. She says he did the right thing, as it's better to go along with things than to try to avoid them. Regarding his task, she says he passed since despite being a poor conversationalist, he has made an effort, which earns him points and levels him up to level 3 in the game, though he isn't very pleased. At the end of the school day, Tomozaki runs into Izumi outside the school. Seeing her upset, he follows his friend's advice to comment on her expression. She gets annoyed at being told she looks sad, so he decides to leave. However, she stops him and asks him to teach her how to play takfem since he knows how, which surprises the protagonist as he didn't expect this. After what happened, Izumi tells the protagonist that she wants to learn how to play takfem because she always walks with Nakamura, who was only interested in that video game. When she tried to challenge him to a match, he rejected her, saying it would be too easy and just get in his way. She also mentions that Erika, one of her classmates, confessed her feelings to the young man and he rejected her. Izumi has a hunch that it was because of her, but her friend always leaves her out, which she doesn't understand. Fumiya is confused and decides to help her learn to play, so she suggests going to her house. When they arrive, they start playing and Tomozaki concludes that her movements aren't good. He begins to show her simple techniques like long and short jumps for practice. Since she struggles with this, he gives her a stopwatch to practice outside the game whenever she can. He takes teaching seriously and speaks with such confidence that she's impressed. He realizes he's imitating Hinami. However, after analyzing the game's moves and attacks, Fumiya provides her with a guide to all the character moves, which she needs to memorize and then practice. After she is surprised that he seems to spend more time on the game than having fun, he tells her that he likes being alone but met someone who made him view life as a game, and since then, he has been trying to change and put effort into it. He encourages his friend to pursue her goal with the game. The next day, the protagonist tells Hinami about what happened with Kikuchi, and she asks him to invite Kikuchi out to see a movie, which he's not very convinced about. On a new school day, Fumiya notices that Izumi has improved her timing with a stopwatch and congratulates her. Later, he runs into Kikuchi in the library, where he apologizes for lying about the book. He had never read it and pretended that he had. He proposes they meet again in the library to discuss their favorite authors, which she happily agrees to. However, he did not invite her out as he didn't feel it was appropriate after confessing the truth, but plans to do so later. When the protagonist heads to the classroom to meet Hanami and tell her what happened with Kikuchi, he is intercepted by Nakamura's friends. When he reaches one of the classrooms, he finds Shuji waiting to challenge him to a video game duel. Fumiya tells him he knows he's been practicing to beat him but can't say how, though he mentions it was Izumi who told him. He then notices that Nakamura is angrier, presumably because he is now friends with Izumi. At that moment, Izumi arrives with Erika and her friends and they decide to stay and watch. During the match, the protagonist wins easily, which upsets his rival, who demands a rematch, and they continue this way for a while. Hanami arrives, learns about the situation, and decides to stay and watch as well. After several attempts, Nakamura loses, which makes him irritable. Erika asks him to stop, saying it's pathetic to see him try so hard over a trivial game, which angers Nakamura even more. Tomozaki is even more upset because he doesn't like people badmouthing his favorite game and is even more enraged by the mockery of others' efforts since his rival has been practicing hard to win. Izumi, hearing all this, decides to support Tomozaki and his friends, knowing that takfem is a challenging game that requires significant effort. After this, Erika decides to leave, which puts Izumi in a bad spot as she confronts her friends and is scared. Nakamura tries to calm her down, while the protagonist tells Hinami that for the first time he didn't intervene in a dispute. The next day, Tomozaki tells Hinami about what happened with Kikuchi and now invites her to go out and see a movie. She says she can't because she has club activities, but suggests they could see another movie afterward. This surprises the protagonist as it will be his first time going out with a girl, making him happy because he has achieved one of his goals. After the guys went out to see a movie, the protagonist continues his life focused on video games, but is still trying to understand the game called life. However, thanks to Hinami, he has managed to make some progress and can now talk to some girls without problems like Izumi, who tells him that she has been practicing a lot in takfem and feels ready to face Nakamura, even though they realize that her birthday is approaching. During class, Mizusawa approaches the protagonist just to tell him that he was surprised by how he reacted to facing Erika, since he was very brave and impressed by it. Mizusawa wants him to know that he has people like him on his side. This impresses Tomozaki, who later tells Hinami. Additionally, Mizusawa suggested organizing a group outing, so Tomozaki needs to invite a girl. Hinami thinks it's a good time to put the next goal into action, which is to go on a date with a girl who is not her, so she asks him to choose someone. With several options, the young man chooses Izumi, as they had discussed a gift for Nakamura. Later, the protagonist suggests to Izumi that they go out in a group to shop for Nakamura's gift, but she declines because she doesn't want to drag others into her needs. Not knowing how to handle the situation, the young man invents that he also plans to buy something for his rival so they can become friends. The girl is excited and agrees since she also wants her two friends to get along. However, after class, the young man runs into Mizusawa, who is again impressed because Fumiya invited Izumi, and by the way, she has changed her appearance, suspecting that she is reading a fashion magazine. The protagonist, not knowing what to do, pretends this is the case. During dinner, Tomozaki receives an invitation to join a group chat from Hinami, which he doesn't know how to handle. After dinner, he decides to accept, and it turns out that everyone who will be going on the double outing is waiting for him to coordinate the day. On the day of the outing, Tomozaki and Hinami wait for the others, but the young man is nervous as it's his first group outing. However, the girl lets him know that he needs to meet a goal. Make at least 2 good suggestions. At that moment, Mizusawa and Izumi arrive and everyone starts chatting while the protagonist just observes. When everyone leaves, he realizes he hasn't said anything in the initial moments. Later, the group is in a store. Izumi tries to ask Fumiya what she should buy for Nakamura, and he suggests thinking about the things Nakamura likes and browsing the stores a bit. However, she approaches him to share a secret. Seeing Hinami and Mizusawa together, she mentions a rumor that they are dating, which surprises the protagonist. When Tomozaki is alone with Izumi, he finds it difficult to come up with 2 good suggestions. As she remains uncertain about what to buy for the guy she likes, the young man begins to mention that Nakamura is a handsome guy with nice hair, suggesting buying something for his hair. Just then, the others arrive, and Mizusawa suggests helping her find a good product for the gift, which annoys Hinami since the protagonist was supposed to do that. When they reach the store, the student uses Fumiya as a model to try out the hair product, and the girls are surprised by the change. Later, the protagonist realizes what he really wants to give his friend. After shopping, the group goes out for pizza with lots of cheese, and Tomozaki notices that Mizusawa knows about Hinami's obsession with cheese, which intrigues him. As he says goodbye to everyone, he messages Izumi to find out if this rumor is true. The next day, the protagonist meets with Hinami, who is disappointed because he was unable to meet his task despite only making 1 suggestion. However, he explains that the outing was useful to show him how his appearance has changed. During class, the teacher announces that it is time for students who wish to run for the student council to do so. The first to raise her hand is Hinami, though she did not expect Nanami to also run. Hinami proposes to the protagonist that he become Nanami's campaign manager to support her. Initially, she considered naming him her manager, but given the situation, she thinks it's a good idea for him to be on her friend's side as it's perfect for him to level up his conversation skills. However, the young man isn't very convinced, fearing that he might make her lose. For Hinami, that doesn't matter, as she believes her friend is no competition for her and that she will win. After that meeting, Fumiya meets with Nanami and seizes the opportunity to ask if he can be her campaign manager. Despite being surprised by the offer, Nanami kindly agrees. In the library, Tomozaki talks to Kikuchi about Nanami's candidacy, as the student finds it strange that she is running. Kikuchi feels that Nanami might want to change something at school and admits that she also wants to make changes, but asks the young man not to say anything about it. This leaves the protagonist thinking. At home, he understands why Kikuchi wants to change, as she is introverted like him, but he finds it odd for Nanami, who is extroverted and very fun. The next day, the protagonist arrives at school and sees Mimimi starting her campaign with a friend named Yumiko Yamashita, though they don't have much success. The girl apologizes to the protagonist again for naming Yumiko as her campaign manager, but she says she will let him know if she needs help. Meanwhile, Fumiya notices that on the other side are Hinami and Mizusawa, as she is his assistant. He understands this since Hinami can convince anyone and knows everything about the students, so he now understands that Hinami might end up winning. Later, Tomozaki encounters Nanami again, who seems to be in a rush but shows him a flyer she printed for her campaign. The young man notices several errors in the print and design, so he takes the opportunity to join the campaign and help her by modifying the design. She is thrilled with this, and he proposes to be her brain for the small details she struggles with. Nanami likes the idea and even starts calling him Brain. She then asks why he is so determined to help her. Tomozaki invents that he would like to see Hinami fall because, as a gamer, he enjoys challenges and sees Hinami as a great opponent. Nanami understands and admits that she was discouraged about competing against her friend, but decided to make some changes, hoping for great results with the young man by her side. The protagonist dives into this game called Life, guided by Hinami. He starts to find the game entertaining but wants to face her, though with his low level, he can't. Instead, he plans to use tricks and skills learned by working with someone the same level as her, which is why he stays by Nanami's side to beat her. They start their campaign by going to the sports club, where the girl takes the opportunity to tell the coach about her plans for the club if she wins the campaign and asks her to spread the word about the proposal to gain some votes. The coach agrees, thinking it's a good idea. After spending the day campaigning, Nanami asks the protagonist why he is so eager to defeat Hinami. He cannot confess that they are rivals in TACFM, so he returns the question. She starts asking him questions about first and second places in various situations, leading him to understand that everyone always remembers the first place or position, but often forgets the second. She wants to win to be remembered because despite being pretty and fun, no one remembers her for coming in second place in exams. The young man encourages her to win. After several days of campaigning, Tema asks the protagonist not to push his friend too hard, as she always puts in a lot of effort. He knows this and sees that she continues to ask for votes. Finally, after Tomozaki finishes preparing the campaign speech, Nanami thanks him for his help and is satisfied with it. Although she still finds his way of speaking and acting amusing, both are now ready to defeat Hinami, while Hinami sees that Fuyui completed the task she was given, making her happy. After what happened, Hinami feels a bit discouraged as she sees how well the protagonist is doing. They haven't been able to compete in TACFM because he has been busy with the elections. Meanwhile, Fumiya admits he is happy but insists that he has been competing with her all along. Finally, the day arrives when each candidate must give their speech. Hinami speaks first, accompanied by her campaign manager. The protagonist and Nanami are confident that they can give her a tough time with their speech. However, they are surprised and somewhat disheartened when they hear Hinami. She promises improvements in the cafeteria and even steals the idea of air conditioners in classrooms, which was their strong point. Despite the challenge, she delivers her speech confidently in front of the teachers present. Once Hinami finishes, it is Nanami's turn. Mimimi goes out to speak in front of the students. With Tomozaki's help, they try to improvise a good presentation, but it goes poorly. The other students laugh at her because the presentation doesn't go well, but she remains happy and tries to improvise the situation. Afterward, she runs to Tomozaki to thank him for his help, but he feels uncomfortable with the situation. After the speeches, the students cast their votes, and by a large margin, Hinami wins. Despite losing, Nanami is relaxed with the protagonist as they both put in a lot of effort and could try again. The next day, Hinami has doubts about the speech given by Nanami and the protagonist. She asks Tomozaki about it when they are alone. He says it was all part of his plan, but despite trying, it didn't work. She starts laughing, finding it very amusing, but the young man is annoyed because he had to do it since she sabotaged his speech by playing dirty. However, Hinami is still happy with the result, but she must complete her task of spending time alone with the girl. Later, the protagonist meets Kikuchi in the library, but he actually has the task of asking her out since Hinami asked him to invite her to see a movie she likes. He doesn't know how to do it and is very nervous, practicing in his mind. Kikuchi notices that he is acting strangely, so he seizes the opportunity and decides to invite her, though both are blushing. She happily accepts the date. The next day, the young man keeps thinking about the outing. He decides to read the books she likes so they will have something to talk about, and he acknowledges that these books are very good. As he leaves the library, Tomozaki sees Tama peeking out of the window and approaches her. She tells him that Hinami and Nanami are running on the track, with both girls significantly ahead of the others. Since the elections, she feels that her friend is trying to surpass Aoi, and she wishes she would stop. When the young man is alone with Hinami, he talks to her about this situation. She assures him that what she is doing is similar to a video game as she puts in the same effort. Therefore, he shouldn't worry, although the protagonist is not entirely convinced. Later, the boy unexpectedly encounters Mimimi, who starts bothering him to confess his feelings. He only tells her that he knows she is working hard and assures her that he supports her. She thanks him and says that it's true, as she needs to work twice as hard since the elections. Later, Tama is again at the school window, so Fumiya approaches her and sees that the girls are running on the track again. Both are worried about Nanami. Tama starts recounting how she found it difficult to make friends, but after the first term of her first year, Mimimi approached her, teasing her by touching her cheeks. Tama tried to ignore her, but Mimimi didn't stop, and that's how they became friends. She believes that some people are good at making friends, and those people are amazing. She also shares that Hinami came to her for advice when Nanami asked for help with a girl in her class who didn't fit in. Even though Aoi said that the girl might not want to fit in, Mimimi didn't give up, and they became good friends. Hinami asked her to keep this conversation secret as Nanami would be embarrassed and only told her this because the jokes she made were for her own good. Later, the three friends and the protagonist go to a store to buy something to drink. There, Tama acts normally with her friend while Tomozaki tells Hinami that he ran into Tama after leaving the library, and they chatted for a while. While Nanami sleeps, she dreams of an old memory where her basketball team faces off against Hinami's team. Despite Mimimi and her team losing, Nanami feels frustrated as she hears her teammates being happy about reaching a certain stage, while she is disheartened. Upon waking, she decides to keep working hard and pushes herself further by going for a run. During class, Nanami falls asleep, causing the teacher to call her out. Although she pretends not to have fallen asleep, her friends are worried about her. In the library, Tama notices this situation and tells the protagonist that Nanami might have been frustrated since the elections, which could explain her desire to compete against Konami. However, she doesn't understand Aoi's constant competition and her goal. Later, Tomozaki goes home with the girls, still pondering whether to stop Nanami or let her continue. When he is alone with Mimimi, he asks if she still wants to defeat Hinami together and if she is still working hard. She responds that after working so much, she cannot quit halfway, so she wants to keep trying. He has no choice but to respect her decision and encourages her to succeed. The next day, Mimimi waits for Hinami to start running. When Hinami arrives, the race begins. However, Nanami is distracted by thoughts of the past tournament, causing her to stumble. But she doesn't fall, Aoi is concerned. Later, Hinami shows her concern to Tomozaki, who questions why she wants to defeat him. Hinami reveals that her desire to compete started when she beat Nanami in a basketball tournament but doesn't tell the full story, which intrigues Tomozaki. He seeks answers by talking to a student about the tournament. The student tells him that Nanami felt frustrated after losing, despite her teammates being grateful for how far they went. The next day, Tama and Tomozaki are relieved because it is raining, which they think will make Mimimi take a rest day. However, they see a girl about to train and run to stop her, thinking it's their friend, but it turns out to be Aoi. They then assume Mimimi must have gone home, but in reality, Mimimi is watching from afar as Oe trains. This distress further upsets her, and she becomes so distracted the next day that she misses practice. The protagonist notices this and decides to follow her when she leaves school. When he finds her, he asks about her practice and mentions that Yumiko told him about the tournament. Mimimi gets upset about her secret being revealed, but explains that after losing, she went to the final tournament and Aoi's team lost, leaving her in second place. She saw Hanami's sadness while her teammates were happy and even cried when she heard her rival's team had won first place. This experience led her to change her behavior to fit in with moods and not be an ordinary person, wanting to be special like Aoi. She was surprised to see Hanami at her school, and Hanami approached her to say she had been thinking about her since the tournament and wished they could have been on the same team. Mimimi admits she admires her friend and is grateful, which led to them becoming friends and joining the track team. However, after winning again, she realized she wanted to defeat Hanami and shine on her own. She apologizes for sharing her sad story, but the protagonist tries to assure her that she has her own shine. However, this doesn't work, and she decides to leave, using the excuse of forgetting something. The next day, Tama and Hanami learn that Mimimi has resigned from the track team. She apologizes, explaining that her body can't take it anymore, so she decided to quit. This concerns everyone, especially the protagonist, who asks Hanami to accompany him and Tama to her home. When alone, Tama asks her friend if she hates Hanami for leaving the team. Mimimi assures her that she doesn't hate her as she's a good person who cares about her. She then tearfully admits that she felt jealous of Hanami's constant victories and had thoughts that if she cared so much about her friend, she should stop competing so Hanami could win. Overwhelmed by these thoughts, she decided to quit to avoid hating Hanami. Tama hugs her, calling her a hero for always smiling and saying everything is fine while putting in so much effort. She then admits that Mimimi is number one in doing silly things, which lifts Nanami's spirits and puts her in a good mood. Encouraged by these words, Nanami decides to return to the track team the next day, and her mixed feelings towards Hanami calm down a bit. After everything that happened, Nakamura's birthday arrives. Izumi gives her gift, and the protagonist must also give his. Summoning his courage, he nervously presents his gift, explaining that the joystick is key in versus games and could help Nakamura. Nakamura accepts the gift, but Hanami is watching them since she had assigned a task to talk to her classmate for 3 minutes. As the protagonist and the girls go out for a meal, they tease him about the question. Hanami reveals that the rumor is false, but more importantly, Mimimi apologizes to the group for any trouble caused and gives everyone a gift, a doll similar to the one she owns. Summer vacation is about to begin, so the couple meets at the mall. Hanami tells the protagonist that he should not take a break and must continue completing tasks. Her goal for the end of the vacation is for him to go out with Kikuchi, which surprises the young man as he thinks it is too soon and is unsure if it will work. She insists that it will work since they have some things in common and she is sure Kikuchi likes him. To practice, Hanami pretends that they are on a date and creates a plan as if he had done it himself. Later, they go to a clothing store to buy something for Tomozaki. Hanami then decides to give him her backpack, but he feels it's too much. To balance it out, she asks him to buy something so he can keep the gift. They then go to an arcade to continue with the supposed date, where they play Takfim. The young man notices that his friend has been working hard, but it's still not enough as he wins again, which frustrates the girl who demands a rematch. Later, they stop so Fumiya can send a message to Kikuchi. He feels nervous but does it, and Kikuchi replies that she would love to go to the movies with him, indicating she is interested. After their outing, Hanami suggests attending a barbecue organized by their group where he is invited. This is also to help him make more friends and to bring Nakamura and Izumi together. Tomozaki agrees, and Hanami assigns him the task of provoking Mizusawa 3 times. Otherwise, he will be the one accepting others' decisions without proposing anything. The next day, Tomozaki and Mizusawa meet, and Mizusawa starts teasing him about being a loser because he noticed Tomozaki's change in wardrobe. Tomozaki is unsure how to respond. Hanami arrives and they head to Mimimi's house, but she apologizes as they can't meet there. Oi suggests going to Fumiya's house since it's nearby. Upon arrival, Tomozaki's younger sister is surprised to see the group and informs their mother. Mizusawa comments that his family is fun, which Tomozaki doesn't take as a compliment, interpreting it as Mizusawa trying to be friendly as Hanami suggested. In Mimi's room, she starts checking for any dirt but only finds old joysticks. Tomozaki explains that he doesn't use them because they are too delicate. They then plan to make sure the couple has time alone by handling the barbecue themselves. Tomozaki tries to suggest not forcing them to do it since lighting the fire is difficult. Mizusawa agrees, making Tomozaki satisfied with completing another task, so he approaches the situation with more confidence afterward. Tomozaki realizes that the guys genuinely care about their friends. Mizusawa notices Tomozaki bought hair wax but hasn't used it, so he shows him how. Mizusawa realizes Tomozaki truly puts effort into what he does, which brings them closer even to the point where Mizusawa starts calling him by his first name, surprising the girls. Finally, the day of the date arrives. When Kikuchi arrives, she apologizes for being late, but they head to the movies. On the way, she mentions being very sensitive to the sun, which embarrasses her a bit. After the movie, they go out for lunch. The young man follows his friend's lead to keep conversations going and feels he has improved, as he can now cover up silent pauses. However, Kikuchi tells him that he is a mystery. Sometimes it's easy to talk to him, but other times it's difficult, which makes him feel like he's still a lower-level player. After the date ends, they head home. On the train, Kikuchi confesses that she didn't mean to be harsh. It's difficult for her to talk to guys, but not with him. She suggests going on another date since she enjoyed herself. Later, the young man tells Hinami about this and proposes inviting Kikuchi to see the fireworks, which Kikuchi eventually accepts, making him happy. On the day of the barbecue, the group travels to spend the day and night together. Tomozaki asks Hinami about Teiki, who was the only guy not at the meeting to plan things. She tells him not to worry as Teiki wouldn't have been helpful anyway. Later, Hinami gives Tomozaki more tasks. This time he needs to do what he did with Mizusawa, but with Nakamura. The tasks should become increasingly complex, and Tomozaki also needs to get closer to Mizusawa and be friendly, as this could help him earn bonuses in life. When they arrive at the campsite, Hinami assigns tasks, putting Nakamura and Izumi together, while the other guys are with Mimimi, and Tomozaki is paired with her to start the fire. When Tomozaki and his friend are alone, he thinks Hinami paired them together for a meeting, but she confesses that she sometimes gets tired of pretending, so it was a good idea. Later, the group enjoys the food and has fun. Tomozaki observes and realizes that what might have been something he would have rejected in the past is now enjoyable to him. After lunch, the group decides to go to the river and tries to leave the couple alone. Tomozaki hopes everything will go well, but he notices that Teiki is with them and might spoil things. Teiki shows Izumi a crab, which scares her and makes her fall into the water. Fortunately, Nakamura helps her, which brings them closer together, leaving Tomozaki relieved. Later, Tomozaki spends time with the other guys for a men's talk, which is his first experience. Nakamura mentions that Izumi has been sending him messages about a guy she likes, but he doesn't realize that she's talking about him. This makes Fumiya think, and Nakamura takes the opportunity to make a joke, which is part of his task. After Mizusawa and Tomozaki send what they learned to the girls via message, they decide to go to the girls' room. Once there, the guys start playing cards, and everyone notices the competition between Hinami and Tomozaki, as they are the ones who won the most. Tomozaki gets so focused on the game that he forgets his task. When he finally gets the chance, he mocks Nakamura, making everyone laugh. Nakamura changes the subject by revealing that Mizusawa is dating a girl from another school. Mizusawa avoids the topic by going to the bathroom, and Tomozaki follows him asking about it. Mizusawa confesses that he doesn't like the girl but has been inviting her out, and if Tomozaki wants, they could date. Tomozaki doesn't understand why someone would date someone they don't like, leaving his friend pondering the question. That night, the group decides to take a nighttime excursion in pairs. As expected, Nakamura and Izumi are the first to go, and the rest say their strategy is perfect, which Teiki doesn't understand. The second group then goes out, leaving Tomozaki and Hinami together. For Hinami, this is perfect for practice. As they advance, Aoi clings to Tomozaki, making him nervous. When they are startled by a cicada, Aoi ends up very close to him, to the point of almost kissing him. After what happened, Tomozaki starts to get nervous as Hinami moves closer to him, but he decides not to move or break eye contact. However, since she gets too close, he dodges her, and she declares herself the winner. On the way back, Tomozaki starts to wonder what might have happened if he hadn't dodged her. After the excursion, Teiki films everyone at the destination. When Nakamura and Izumi walk away, Mizusawa mentions that they made plans to hang out together, and they are making small steps forward. Hinami then wishes her friend well with the girl from another school he's dating. Later, Tomozaki secretly meets with Hinami to discuss how his tasks went. He explains that he completed them and describes the situations. However, they hear footsteps approaching, so Tomozaki hides, not wanting to be seen. Mizusawa arrives thinking Tomozaki was with Hinami, but when he doesn't find him, he decides to stay and begins confessing that he feels a bit envious of some of the guys, even Fumiya, because they do what they want and are very honest with themselves. Mizusawa wonders if he should be more like them, feeling like he's controlling another character and putting on a show by pretending to be someone else. Meanwhile, Tomozaki listens from the other side of the wall and feels uncomfortable about overhearing the conversation. Mizusawa also feels this way about Hinami, suspecting she might be pretending to be someone she's not, even though she continues to act cheerful and friendly. Mizusawa confesses his feelings for Hinami, expressing a desire to understand her true self in the future. At that moment, Tomozaki appears, feeling it's inappropriate to overhear private conversations, and he apologizes. Hinami explains to Mizusawa that Tomozaki was hiding because he didn't want to be seen, and Mizusawa laughs, accepts the apology, and asks if Tomozaki is always this honest. The next day, the group returns from the camp, but Tomozaki continues to think about that night. Mizusawa had found the courage to reveal his true feelings, while Hinami seemed unmoved and chose to keep hiding behind her mask. This leads Tomozaki to question life and the game even more. Later, Tomozaki awaits his date with Kikuchi. When she arrives, he sees that she is dressed up for the occasion in a yukata. On their way to the festival, he starts to tell her about the camp trip, confessing that, although he never expected it, he found it fun and charming. That night, as they wait for the fireworks, Tomozaki realizes this date feels different from the last one, as he's not using memorized conversation topics and is improvising. As the fireworks near their end, he recalls Hinami's message about expressing his feelings to Kikuchi, but doesn't do so, and they simply go home. At the train station, Tomozaki asks Hinami if they can talk. When she arrives, he tells her about his date with Kikuchi, but admits he couldn't express his feelings because he's still unsure about what he feels for her. He reflects that Mizusawa's words influenced him, and Hinami is very disappointed. She feels that Tomozaki is abandoning the game just because of his feelings, which is like abandoning his character development. Tomozaki argues that human connections shouldn't be treated like objectives or tasks. This angers Hinami so much that she returns the pin he bought for her and asks for her backpack back. As she leaves, Tomozaki realizes he has lost a relationship he thought he had, and it ended so easily because he was an inferior character. After a few days, the protagonist returns to his old life playing TACFAM, but is interrupted by his sister, who has been knocking on his door the entire time. She feels annoyed and disappointed, seeing that her brother has gone back to being the boring person he was before. However, she mentions that he has been ignoring messages from a girl, which can be annoying even for him. Tomozaki realizes this is true and notices messages from Kikuchi, inviting him to buy the latest book by his favorite author. He apologizes for not responding, but agrees to go out. When they meet, Tomozaki goes on the date in the appearance he used to have, reflecting on the times he used memorized topics or the outfits Hinami used to choose. Without using those suggestions, he tends to have awkward conversations, but also feels more connected to someone with his true feelings. After buying the book Kikuchi wanted, Tomozaki continues to ponder what it means to be a player in real life. Before the date, he decided to go out without any masks or adornments, although he was impressed by his achievements and changes and felt happy meeting the goals Hinami set for him. However, he still has doubts about where all this has led him. During lunch, Tomozaki confesses to Kikuchi that he has been receiving help from someone who gave him life lessons and practice with flashcards to memorize topics. He also recorded himself to listen to how he spoke, among other things. Since they saw the fireworks, he's only talked about what's on his mind and feels uncomfortable with the idea of wearing a mask for convenience. He continues to wonder if he should keep being this way or just be himself, as he doesn't know what he really wants. Kikuchi is surprised to hear this, but admits that talking to him is easy because she feels he conveys his mood and emotions. However, this doesn't always happen, possibly when he uses his additional flashcards. She also reveals that his images used to appear in black and white, seeming sad and depressed. But as he started changing, the images gained color. She suggests that if he has someone who added those colors, he should cherish them. Tomozaki thanks her for being honest, and she thanks him for changing how she views life. That night, Tomozaki messages Hinami, insisting on meeting up under the pretense of returning her backpack, which she eventually agrees to despite being annoyed. When they meet, Tomozaki takes Hinami to the place where they revealed their game identities. He confesses that he loves video games because he can connect with the characters as he strived to be the best, in contrast to real life, where he thought he was worthless and his life was dull. He thought it would always be that way until he met someone who changed that and added color to his life. She taught him that he wants to be a great player in real life, but she believes he cannot achieve what he truly wants. However, he makes her realize that she doesn't know much about the real-world game, so he will prove he can play that game using his true desires and being honest. He tells her she could be a top player, but when it comes to having fun, he's the winner and will teach her how to do it, though it will be a slow process. Hinami feels it's not possible, but Tomozaki helps her understand that he is the best player in TACFAM because he uses his true desires and she cannot beat him. This annoys Awad, but she eventually accepts his proposal to try and convince her she can enjoy the game by being herself. After this conversation, the two reconcile and Tomozaki confesses he wants to learn more but use those skills combined with his true feelings. After their conversation, Hinami gives Tomozaki his next task, which is to find a job. He manages to get one thanks to her, but it's at the same place where Mizusawa works. As the days go by, the group has fun spending time together while Tomozaki continues to learn from this game called life, even as he keeps playing TACFAM and Hinami continues trying to beat him. Season 2, Chapter 1. After the protagonist met Hinami, the most popular girl, and decided to play a new game called Life, where she became his coach to help him stop being a weak player. He got to know many people who are now his friends, but he still has a lot more to learn. At the start of the second semester, Tomozaki prepares to go to classes, changing his appearance once again. He then meets with Hinami, clarifying that his ultimate goal is to become a popular guy like her, though he still needs to get a girlfriend. The protagonist agrees as long as it's done without lies or tricks. However, she gives him a task for the start of the semester, to observe the human relationships in the classroom to detect the vibes of the place and then manipulate or involve himself in the situation. Later, at the beginning of classes, Mizusawa grabs Fumiya and reveals the secret that Nakamura and Izumi are dating but must keep it confidential since Erika is in love with Nakamura and they don't want to create problems. Then Nanami calls the protagonist and shows him that the girls brought the dolls she gave them, taking it as a sign of friendship and expecting him to have one too. During class, the teacher announces the upcoming sports festival, so they need to choose captains and select sports for women and men. Taiki volunteers as captain, and despite others laughing at him for leading them to defeat the previous year, they eventually accept him. Erika asks Izumi to run for captain, but Izumi, being shy and scared, declines. Erika then asks Hirabayashi, one of the more introverted students, to be captain. Although she doesn't want to, she decides to accept since the group leader tends to intimidate her. After this, Izumi starts to feel responsible as the attention shifts to her classmate. The next day, Hinami explains to the protagonist the situation that occurred the previous day where Erika exploited her image as a leader and practically forced Hirabayashi into becoming captain simply because she was seen as weak. Due to this, Hinami gives Tomozaki his first task, to try and motivate Erika for the sports festival. Tomozaki sees this as impossible since Erika is difficult to handle, but he proposes treating it like a role-playing game, which he agrees to since it allows him to gather information from other students to find her weak point. The first person he consults is Izumi, whom Tomozaki needs to know how to motivate Erika for the sports festival. The girl is unsure why he's so interested, but is certain that Hirabayashi is struggling with her position. Tomozaki confesses he wants to help his classmate and ensure everyone enjoys themselves. This motivates Izumi as she wants the same, so she recalls that Erika likes softball and was on the team in previous years, which might motivate her. This information is very helpful to the protagonist. During work, Tomozaki encounters his classmate Tsugumi Narita, and seeing similarities between her and Erika, he explains the situation in his class. She believes that as long as Hirabayashi is captain, Erika will not feel motivated unless something extraordinary happens, and that motivation will come if her desires are satisfied with good performance. This gives Tomozaki another useful piece of information. Finally, he decides to consult Kikuchi, who suggests that Erika might be afraid of being ridiculed by others, which could be why she might not want to participate. With all the collected information, the young man needs to create a strategy. The next day, the class decides on the sports to play, with the men choosing basketball and the women selecting softball after a vote. Following this, Izumi, Hinami, and the protagonist discuss the situation, leading Izumi to decide to become captain, as she has been thinking a lot and wants to save Hirabayashi, who is not doing well. Meanwhile, Tomozaki's strategy is forming in his mind, and he needs 3 items for it. He first turns to Mimimi, then to Mizusawa, and finally meets with Hinami to check if the strategy is valid. Upon confirmation, he asks her to help as well since his strategy involves the 3 arrows. After what happened, Tomozaki discusses his 3 cards to implement the plan, with each one assigned a duty regarding Erika, and they all agree. Although Izumi is also part of the plan, now he just needs to wait for everything to work out. During the sports festival, the protagonist realizes the plan worked as intended. He reviews that the first person who was supposed to talk to Erika was Izumi, asking her to help everyone enjoy the festival since, despite appearances, she cares about her friends. The second was Hinami, who spoke with one of Erika's friends to provoke her by suggesting she isn't good at softball. Finally, Mizusawa motivated Erika by mentioning Nakamura's interest in sports. This encouragement led Erika to participate in the festival without ruining anyone's day. In the basketball game, thanks to the boys, they won. However, Tomozaki also had a task to make a layup, which he practiced extensively. Unfortunately, he was expelled moments after the game started, leading to his teammates mocking him. Later, Class 2-2 celebrated their victory as champions, and everyone was happy with the teamwork. However, Erika noticed Nakamura and Izumi celebrating together, realizing they were dating. The next day, incidents began occurring as Erika started Hirabayashi to vent her feelings after discovering the truth. This continued for several days, and everyone soon realized Erika's actions were malicious. Izumi felt responsible again, as the truth led Erika to target the weakest person in the class, and she wasn't sure whether to confront her. When Tomozaki met with Hinami, she suggested it was better for Izumi not to say anything, as it could worsen the situation, and that all these events had a domino effect. Tomozaki felt sad for Hirabayashi, believing it was unfair to her. However, always said Hirabayashi deserved the treatment and there was no need to help her. This upset Fumiya, who disagreed, stating that unlike a game, not everyone is a player, and he wanted to get involved if necessary. He asked Aoi to try not to make things worse if he did. The next day, Erika continued her behavior, prompting Tomozaki to consider intervening. However, Tama acted first and asked Erika to stop behaving this way just because Nakamura was taken. Erika stood up, grabbed her classmate, and noticed she was trembling, so Tama removed Erika's arm. Erika took advantage of the situation, falsely claiming that Tama had hit her. From then on, Tama became the target of all the blame, and unlike Hirabayashi, she confronted Erika. Erika used the excuse that Tama was at fault for hitting her, leading to ongoing issues over the days. Although Hinami and Mimimi tried to calm Tama, who continued confronting Erika, Most students blamed Tama for everything. Hanami tried to speak with her classmates to stop talking about her friend, while Mamimi distracted her to prevent her from feeling isolated. When Tomozaki was with Hanami, he proposed that everything could stop if Tama ceased responding to Erika. However, Aoi disagreed, saying it would go against her friend's values. After Tomozaki's outing with Mamimi and Tama, Minami felt overwhelmed by her friend's situation and didn't know how to help, only managing to distract her. The next day, Tomozaki met with Tama and advised her to avoid the situation if she felt bad. She confessed that she felt unwell but was okay, knowing she wasn't in the wrong. Tama also noted that they were similar, as Tomozaki had fought and changed, and she asked him to teach her how to do the same. After what happened, Tomozaki tells Tama that he used to be a hunchbacked person who didn't speak properly, but he started changing all that. She confirms that even his way of speaking is now more cheerful. He shows her the recorder he has and plays her voice recordings, revealing that she speaks in a somewhat rude manner, different from what she imagines. He points out areas where she can improve, and she accepts the challenge to change. He teaches her some techniques to speak more cheerfully, and he realizes she is actually good at it and learns quickly, so he thinks that might not be the problem. He advises her to avoid clashing with Erika for now. Later, Hanami opposes Tama's change, believing that Tama is right in her current situation. Tomozaki confesses that despite Hinami's refusal to change her, Tama wants to because she feels sad for Mamimi and wants to do it for her. However, Aoi feels that nothing will be the same if Tama changes. In class, Erika continues to bother Tama, which could lead to arguments, but Tama decides not to respond, creating a different atmosphere in the classroom. Seeing this, Tomozaki feels pleased that Tama followed his advice, although Mizusawa notices his reaction. When Tomozaki meets with Tama again, he congratulates her for her attitude in class. Even though there was no significant change, it prevented things from getting worse. They now need to work on changing the opinions of their classmates to gain their support. Tama says it's difficult to know what certain classmates think, but she is aware of what some girls think. Tomozaki admits that even for him, understanding collective feelings is challenging as he is still learning, but waiting too long might be too late. Just as Mizusawa arrives, having overheard that they have some issues. Mizusawa confesses he came because he knew Tomozaki and Tama were plotting something against Erika and offers his help, as they might need someone like him. Fumiya notices that Tama seems annoyed by Mizusawa's presence and asks if there's an issue between them and Nakamura, as he always observes they don't get along. Mizusawa reveals it's due to a past problem, and as a friend, he sides with Nakamura, but he still offers to help. This makes Tomozaki think, and before Mizusawa leaves, he stops him, saying he knows what needs to be done first and tasks Tama with becoming friends with Mizusawa. Tomozaki explains that this could help Tama gain acceptance in different groups since she tends to isolate herself. Mizusawa agrees to help, but the decision is up to Tama, who accepts. They then sit down to talk for the first time, and Tama admits she avoided Mizusawa because she thought he would treat her badly like Nakamura. Mizusawa is surprised by her honesty, asking her to ask him anything to understand him better. Tama asks if the rumors about Aoi are true and if he likes her. Mizusawa is surprised by the question, but admits he likes Aoi as a friend, and he immediately returns the question, suggesting Tama might like Fumiya, since they spend time together. Tama immediately denies this, saying she would never be with Tomozaki, which makes him feel a bit embarrassed, and she apologizes. Later, Mamimi comes to pick up Tama and notices not only Tomozaki but also Mizusawa with her. They decide to go out for a drink, where they discuss their plans, and Mamimi is happy that two gentlemen are helping her friend. However, they ask Fumiya to work on his confidence since he doesn't seem very gentlemanly. After the girls leave, the boys think about how to continue and break down the wall separating Tama from others. But first, they need to practice in case of failure, ensuring it doesn't interfere with a plan. Mizusawa suggests trying with Teiki, as nothing significant would happen, but asks him not to tell Nakamura, as it might cause trouble. The next day, Hinami is uncomfortable with what Tomozaki and the others are doing but cannot intervene since Tama wants to change. For now, she tells Tomozaki that they will suspend meetings until the situation improves. In class, situations continue, but Tama learns to endure, leading other students to feel compassion for her. Tomozaki notices Hinami talking with one of Erika's group members without issue. Later, the boys wait for Teiki, but Fumiya realizes that Teiki is somewhat similar to Tama and himself, making him wonder why he is accepted in the class. Mizusawa explains that Teiki has an adorable side that makes him accepted, unlike Tama, and suggests trying to be a bit more adorable. When Teiki arrives, he apologizes for not helping but assures that some people are as worried as he is and believe Erika is overstepping. Tama feels lost as she doesn't know the classmates Teiki mentions, so Tomozaki advises her to show interest in them, as he once felt the same but became interested in people after talking to them. The important thing is to show interest in others to accept them as they are. Tama understands this and now knows what to do. Later, Mamimi picks up her friend again and notices Teiki is also with them. Hanami appears and is surprised to see them. Mizusawa explains that Tomozaki's group was formed to help Tama, which surprises Tomozaki as he is treated like a leader. Later, Hinami asks Tama to speak alone. Tama confirms she genuinely wants to change and has Tomozaki's support. Despite differing views, Oe accepts this, though she would prefer her friend didn't change. The next day, Tomozaki meets with Mimimi and asks her how she manages to annoy Tama. Mimimi assures him that she doesn't annoy her but shows her love instead. Knowing this, Tomozaki asks her to show him a comedy video, suggesting that if Tama has an adorable weakness, others might embrace her like they do with Teikei. Mimimi gets excited and teases Tomozaki, making a piggy nose and calling him ugly, though he insists that even if he looks ugly, he is handsome on the inside. Mimimi agrees but then shows him some videos, although Tomozaki is unsure what just happened. Later in class, things remain the same with Erika and Tama continues to endure, but now her classmates feel pity for her. Hanami continues to try to create a safe environment for her friend. Izumi later tells Tomozaki that Aoi asked her to stop seeing Nakamura to avoid worsening the situation. However, when Nakamura found out, he got upset, and now Aoi doesn't know what to do and thought about knitting something for him, but isn't sure if it's the right move. Later, Mizusawa, Tama, and Tomozaki meet. Mizusawa wants to know how Tama is doing with her practice, but she leaves it up to her teacher's judgment. Tomozaki is surprised she calls him a teacher, but confirms she's improving a lot. Tama mentions that they decided to use Mimimi and Teiki as guides. Then Fumiya and Tama show Mizusawa a skit they're preparing based on a video Nanami recommended. Mizusawa laughs and says he liked it a lot and wants to join, acknowledging that Tama has improved so much she has surpassed the teacher. After that, Tomozaki is with Kikuchi in the library, having asked her to talk to Tama. She agrees even though they have never spoken before. Discussing the classroom situation, Kikuchi expresses sympathy for Tama but believes Erika and the other classmates who are bothering Tama are doing so because they are weak and hide behind the situation. In contrast, Tama is strong and others are taking advantage of her strength. Kikuchi thinks it needs to be resolved quickly and is happy to help. Later, Tama and Mizusawa meet Tomozaki and Tama is a bit nervous but still goes into the room. Both are surprised to see Kikuchi but understand she is the right person since she isn't a friend of Erika or Tama. Kikuchi appears very embarrassed and Mizusawa asks her to stay calm. Once the girls sit down to talk, Mizusawa teases Tomozaki for keeping Kikuchi hidden, while the girls discuss Fumiya and how he has changed. Tama asks Kikuchi if the change is good for her, and Kikuchi assures her it is, provided it's what Tama wants. They then talk about the ongoing situations and Kikuchi is pleased that Tama has so many friends supporting and helping her. Tama becomes nervous and starts discussing her height as practice with the boys, which Kikuchi finds endearing and agrees that Tama is adorable. Mizusawa declares the meeting a success, and now they need to focus on making Tama more interested in her classmates. Afterward, Mimimi comes to pick up Tama and notices Kikuchi with him. Mizusawa explains that Tomozaki's team needed a temporary member and that he and Kikuchi know each other well. Nanami approaches Kikuchi, excited and embarrassed for not noticing her before as she is very cute. Tomozaki intervenes to stop Nanami, noting that Kikuchi doesn't belong to her world. Then, Hinami arrives, sees them, and takes her friends away, while Mizusawa also disappears, leaving Tomozaki alone with Kikuchi. When they go home together, Kikuchi admits she was nervous but enjoyed seeing him having fun with other people. The next day, Tama presents her performance with the help of Hinami and Mimimi, and their friends are there as well, so the plan works and Tama manages to appear adorable. To celebrate this success, Tomozaki, Tama, Mizusawa, and Teiki go out to eat while waiting for Mimimi. However, on the other side of the street is one of Erika's friends, who decides to call her upon seeing the situation. At the end of a new school day, Tama heads to her locker to get her backpack but notices that the doll Mimimi gave her is broken. She shows it to her friends and tells Tomozaki that seeing the situation made her want to scream because it was a gift from Nanami, but she held back since many of them are making an effort to help her. She decides to stay calm but starts crying, saying she wants to run away from this place. This surprises the others and Fumiya observes Erika's friends and tries to confront them, but Mizusawa stops him, saying it won't help since Erika isn't there. Hanami, however, gets angry and says they will pay for it. Later, Izumi mentions she has been knitting and sewing all week so she could fix it. In the meantime, Hinami suggests not leaving Tama alone in case any problems arise. The next day, Erika arrives in class and notices her desk is knocked over, immediately blaming Tama for it. Hanami says she was with Tama the entire time and so can't be blamed, and the other classmates can confirm this. With no immediate evidence, Erika accuses her friend Mao, who tries to deny it, but Erika is convinced it was her because Mao has been acting strangely lately and has been hanging out with other friends, possibly tired of the constant teasing. Tomozaki immediately recalls when Hinami was talking to Mao, but despite Mao's denial of doing something like that to her friend, Erika warns her to be careful as pathetic people tend to become ugly. Mao doesn't stay silent and starts pointing out Erika's own pathetic behavior, like wearing false eyelashes that look bad. This upsets Erika, who unintentionally reacts and hurts Mao. The students are shocked, and Tomozaki recalls Kikuchi's words about not liking to be the target of teasing and Izumi's liking for cosmetics and makeup, realizing they hit the mark. At that moment, Erika starts to feel pity for Mao, but Hanami interrupts and tells her to apologize. However, Erika continues to act strong and refuses to do so, leading everyone to turn against her. Fumiya notices she's controlling the situation by turning the other students against her, but Hanami takes charge, standing behind Nakamura and talking about the need to apologize, which she also does with Izumi. Tomozaki realizes it's all a strategy as Hanami makes eye contact with both to involve them too. Erika hears the boy she likes saying she's at fault from the beginning, urging her to stop being childish and apologize, which further angers Erika as she sees it as a couple teaming up against her. She tells everyone to do their lovey-dovey stuff elsewhere because it disgusts her. The other classmates start to assume she's jealous of the couple, and Erika starts crying, asking them to stop making fun of her and showing on her face that they're dating. However, the students don't believe her tears and think she's just playing the victim. Hanami tries to continue talking, but Tomozaki gives her a look to stop. She then changes her tone and tells Erika to stop, asking Nakamura for a tissue to dry her tears. Tomozaki understands she's aiming for Erika to see the tissue holder that Izumi knitted for him, which angers Erika even more, causing her to react badly. This leads the classmates to start teasing her about her actions. However, Tama stands up and asks everyone to stop since they're doing the same thing to her and requests everyone to get along in an admirable manner, which makes the others realize and decide to stop because of her. Erika then runs away, followed by Izumi, while Mao and her friend apologize to Tama and Hirabayashi for what happened. Later, Tama tells Mizusawa and Fumiya that she feels bad for involving Aoi in this situation, but then decides to go train. When the boys are alone, Mizusawa confesses that there are things Tomozaki knows about Hanami that he doesn't, but despite that, he doesn't want to hear it from anyone else. After seeing everything that happened that week, he decides to be more honest and tells Tomozaki that he loves Aoi. After a few days, Erika has calmed down so much that she no longer stands out in class, although Izumi has approached her, and she is once again at the top of the class while being more careful about her behavior. Tama, on the other hand, has expanded her circle of friends as the other girls now enjoy her company and find her adorable. After this, the whole group, including Nakamura, who is now a friend of Tama, gathers. Nanami takes the opportunity to give everyone friendship dolls, each with a detail sung by Izumi, as Tomozaki suggested to ensure no one feels left out. That night, Tomozaki continues to reflect on his teacher's handling of Erika, feeling that her way of resolving the situation was poor. He feels there are still things he doesn't know about her, and when Mizusawa asked that question, he felt the need to understand her even more. A few days later, Hanami finally wins a set against Tomozaki in Takfim, but he reminds her that she has only won once and lost 17 times. The next day, Tomozaki meets with Hanami and asks her about what she did to take down Erika. She confesses that it was all planned and that she started doing it when Erika began bothering Tama because she thought it was unfair that everything fell on Tama. Tomozaki thinks it was too far and cruel to use her friends' relationships to hurt their feelings, but Hanami doesn't fully agree, saying Erika deserved it for what she did, although maybe she went a bit too far. Later, during classes, Tomozaki talks with Izumi and mentions that although things have returned to normal, Erika and Mao are still friends but speak badly about each other behind the scenes, making him realize he's caught in the middle. However, he feels good about it since both express their feelings instead of keeping them bottled up. For her, Tama is the one who saved her, and she is grateful and wishes to change as Tama did. Then the teacher announces the upcoming school festival and says they need to nominate 4 women and 4 men to organize it, giving them some time if anyone wants to volunteer. As Tomozaki is walking, Mamimi approaches him to ask if he would be a member of the festival committee. The young man thinks that Hanami might ask him as a task, but he tells his friend that festivals have always bored him, though Manami wants to have fun, so he agrees to participate, which makes Manami happy as she wants to create good memories now. Later, Hanami shows Tomozaki pictures of Nanami, Tama, Izumi, and Kikuchi, asking which one he likes best to be his girlfriend or if he prefers her. This surprises Tomozaki, as he didn't expect such a question. He doesn't understand why Izumi is among the candidates since she's dating Nakamura, but Hanami explains that they might break up and she could confess her feelings to him. Hanami then sets up a simulation where Fumiya imagines each girl confessing her love in a place where no one else hears them. Tomozaki admits he would like it to be one of them, but Hanami asks him to keep 2 or more in mind for more options. Despite her request to reveal who he's thinking about, Tomozaki asks for a bit more time to be sure. Meanwhile, Aoi assigns him the task of creating a Pinstagram account, as it could help see how people or even girls perceive him. That night, Hanami sends Tomozaki a list of tasks to upload to the social media platform. He can't believe the number of photos he needs to take, involving every friend he has at school. The next day, Tomozaki is with Kikuchi in the library. She says she's happy that everything has calmed down since the situation was getting out of hand, although she finds Hanami's actions strange, assuming she didn't want Erika to get her way. Tomozaki thanks Kikuchi for helping Tama, but also notes that she noticed how Aoi acted. After Kikuchi leaves, Tomozaki realizes he forgot to ask for a photo to upload to Pinstagram. Unable to complete one of the tasks, he decides to go with Nakamura, Teki, and Mizusawa to play video games to get an opportunity. After playing, Mizusawa suggests that Tomozaki run for the festival committee with him, which he agrees to. However, as the boys decide to leave, Tomozaki has little time and asks everyone to take a photo in front of a giant poster to upload to Pinstagram. Although Nakamura isn't too keen, he agrees and Fumiya manages to take the photo. The next day, Tomozaki tells Hinami that he managed to take a photo with Nakamura and Teki, but Mizusawa also ended up in it since he was there, which isn't a problem, but the photo is blurry. Hinami decides to use it as her profile picture. She then gives Tomozaki an extra task to run for the festival committee, which he says he was already planning to do with the boys. Despite this, she asks him to get involved and offer ideas that are accepted. During class, the boys, along with Tomozaki, decide to run for the committee, while Nanami, Izumi, Kashiwazaki, and Seno are the female candidates. Thus, the committee responsible for the school festival is formed. After what happened, the members decided that their class will be at the manga cafe, while a play will be performed on stage. They now need to decide which play to choose. Izumi suggests doing Romeo and Juliet, while the others propose their own ideas. Teki's idea is somewhat childish, so the protagonist, remembering his task, proposes creating an original play. The other members agree, but now the problem is that he was appointed as the director, and he also has to decide who will be paired up in the play. Later, the committee finishes its meeting, and Izumi is chosen as the project captain since she volunteered for the role. After everyone leaves, Tomozaki is left alone with Nanami, and they discuss the play they need to do. She thinks it will be a lot of fun. However, as they are about to part ways, Tomozaki remembers he needs to take a photo of her eating ramen according to Hinami's list, so he decides to invite her to eat. To his surprise, Nanami chooses a different dish while he chooses ramen. She tries to figure out why he invited her to eat, as it seems strange to her. Tomozaki excuses himself by saying he was just hungry. When the food arrives, Tomozaki asks her to try the ramen, and as she does, he quickly takes a photo. She notices and asks for an explanation, but she isn't very convinced. She then asks him to try her food, which he doesn't know how to refuse but does without thinking. Nanami is a bit upset because she doesn't understand what's happening and starts eating her food. Tomozaki, seeing her reaction and not understanding why she is upset, decides to finish his ramen to avoid making her wait, realizing that Mimimi was about to finish eating. However, the young man ends up choking. After they both finish, they say goodbye and go home, but Nanami looks at him in a pleasant way. That night, Fumiya reviews the photos he took and realizes that all of them are blurry. The next day, Kikuchi brings her novel to Tomozaki as he had asked her to read it. Since he is the first to see it, she asks him not to be too strict with it. However, he is grateful for her trust. Later, the group of friends meets and due to a game, Teki loses and has to carry everyone's backpacks. The others then run after him. As Hanami is about to follow, she gives Tomozaki a look as he stays alone with Tama, giving him a chance to take a funny photo. Knowing her well, Tomozaki directly asks her for the photo, saying he wants to upload it to his new Pinstagram account. She agrees, and after he takes the photo, she also asks for one, although she doesn't find his face funny. Thanks to this, the young man finally has the score needed to open his account. That night, Tomozaki takes the time to read Kikuchi's novels, which are actually short stories. However, he notices that one of them is unfinished. The next day, they meet, and he tells her he enjoyed each of the stories, being especially impressed by the last one he read, which is about a dragon, even though it is incomplete. She feels nervous because she didn't know he had also received the unfinished one, but it is one of her favorite novels. Due to this, the protagonist suggests using it for the class play. However, she says she is afraid because, being one of her favorites, there was a point where she got blocked and doesn't know how to continue the character's development, although she eventually accepts her classmate's proposal. The next day, Tomozaki shows each committee member Kikuchi's novels, and everyone is impressed, with Mizusawa even doubting if he wrote them himself. Tomozaki clarifies that they are actually Kikuchi's, which leaves Nanami a bit worried. Later, during class, everyone congratulates the author of the novels, and they choose one of them. She says she will make an effort to finish the incomplete part, and now they only need to decide which character each person will play, although Nanami is still thoughtful. Later, the young man is at work, needing to fulfill the photography tasks, so he has to take a photo of Mizusawa, who just appears at that moment. He invites him to do something the next day, and Mizusawa asks him to go to the festival organized by Narita School, suggesting they could take the opportunity to gather information. However, Mizusawa informs him that it is a school for young ladies. After what happened, the protagonist and Mizusawa are ready to enter the Tokusai High School festival, but Mizusawa seems a bit nervous, so his friend tells him to stay calm. Once inside, Mizusawa says he's ready to flirt with girls since they didn't just come to investigate. Tomozaki is not entirely convinced, but when he looks around, his friend is no longer there. He finds Mizusawa talking to two young ladies who end up giving him their phone numbers, leaving Fumiya impressed by his skills. Mizusawa then explains that it's all about the way you speak, not what you say, which immediately reminds Tomozaki of what Hinami once taught him. Later, while they are eating, Tomozaki asks his friend if he likes Aoi, since it doesn't seem right to him to be talking to other girls. Mizusawa confirms that they are not dating and adds that talking to other girls can increase his popularity, which might attract Hinami. Then the boys arrive at Narita's booth, where she immediately asks if they were mean girls since they went to her school. Mizusawa readily admits he was, but Tomozaki was not. She suggests he should get to know some of her classmates, since he's single, but invites them to her horror booth. However, neither of them is scared. At that moment, the two girls Mizusawa was talking to earlier reappear, and they start chatting again. Seeing this, Fumiya tries to join in but doesn't do so well. Mizusawa then suggests that Tomozaki use the glasses one of the girls is wearing. Tomozaki takes a photo of them with the glasses, completing one of his Pinstagram tasks. After the festival, Mizusawa tells the protagonist he wanted to see him flirt, but Tomozaki believes it's impossible for him. Mizusawa disagrees, saying Tomozaki has improved a lot even in how he converses and admires his constant efforts to improve. He advises Tomozaki to talk to girls the way he talks to him. The next day, Tomozaki meets Kikuchi to discuss how the novel for the play is coming along. After Kikuchi mentions she needs to make some adjustments to ensure they have enough time, Tomozaki asks for a photo, as it is also on his list. She nervously agrees and Tomozaki takes the photo, using the excuse of commemorating their work on the play. When Tomozaki meets Hinami in the classroom, she tells him that with the last photo he completed his task, but he won't upload Kikuchi's photo because it embarrasses her. The young man then wonders why Aoi wants to make him as popular as she is, remembering that when they first met, he said you can't change characters in real life. She wants to show him otherwise, but now she is more interested in getting a response from him about who he wants to date. Later, Mimimi asks Tomozaki to be her partner for a stand-up comedy act for the athletics club. He wants to refuse, but decides to accept when he remembers that Hinami asked him to be as proactive as possible in every situation. Mimimi is pleased, but her mood changes when she hears Mizusawa tell Tomozaki that Narita will also attend the festival, seeing Tomozaki become happy. In the library, Kikuchi and Fumiya are finishing the novel, but she still has issues with the ending, not knowing who the main character should end up with or what should happen to the one not chosen. She asks Tomozaki what he would do in her place. Tomozaki feels nervous and confused as he thinks he couldn't make such a decision. Since Hinami asked him to choose among all her friends, he feels he doesn't have the right to do so and he doesn't see the possibility of the girls choosing him. For this reason, he apologizes to Kikuchi, saying he can't help her. After the meeting, Tomozaki is walking home when Mimimi appears and intends to talk to him but sees he is discouraged, so she starts teasing him instead. She has doubts about the meeting with Kikuchi and whether they were alone. Upon learning that they were, she is left perplexed. As they are about to part ways, she asks about Narita, wanting to know who she is and why she attended the girls' school festival. The protagonist simply says his coworker invited him. Despite knowing this, she feels a bit jealous and tells him she appreciates him for what he has done for her and Tama, and even confesses that she likes him a lot. After this confession, Nanami decides to leave, leaving Tomozaki speechless. After what happened, the protagonist is in his room reflecting and trying to understand Nanami's words. He thinks he needs help from a strong character, so he decides to call Hinami. However, he receives a message from Mizusawa asking him to come to work. At work, Mizusawa notices that the protagonist seems off and guesses it's a girl-related problem. Tomozaki thinks he's been rejected, but when Mizusawa says that's not the case, Tomozaki realizes it's a confession. He assumes it was Kikuchi, but Mizusawa is surprised to learn it wasn't her and concludes it must have been Nanami. Mizusawa tells him he could go out with her if he wanted, but he feels it might be rushed. He also thinks that Nanami might have felt pressured seeing him surrounded by many girls, including Kikuchi, which led her to confess. Fumiya finds it hard to believe someone like Nanami would be with him, which upsets Mizusawa, who tells him to stop underestimating himself. He explains that such an attitude might calm him but makes those who care about him sad. This leaves the protagonist thinking that he needs to change his approach, realizing that Nanami really cares about him. The next day, Hinami asks Tomozaki to choose two girls he's interested in to achieve his goal of having a girlfriend. However, he first wants to understand how to tell when someone likes or interests him, which bores Aoi, but she explains it anyway. Tomozaki finally chooses Nanami and Kikuchi, which Hinami anticipated and is puzzled as to why it took him so long. She then asks him to start talking to both to see if something can develop, although he wants to do it honestly and not just as a goal. As a TACFM player, he focuses on the process as well as the outcome, so he will do it his way. Hinami then sends him an event map as a task to complete with the girls, which includes talking about what they expect in a relationship, touching their hand, and buying a matching accessory. Tomozaki finds this overwhelming but feels he has no other option. When classes start, Fumiya gathers the courage to enter the classroom and sees Nanami and Hinami talking. When they see each other, they act strangely, which might raise Aoi's suspicions. During recess, Aoi asks him about it, but he doesn't tell her, and she asks him to complete his task. Later, Kikuchi brings the finished bookcase for the play to the library. Tomozaki wants to use it to ask her what she wants in a relationship. She is nervous and doesn't know how to respond, but uses one of her favorite author's books to explain that being in a relationship means your loved one cannot be replaced by anyone or anything. Tomozaki tries to hide his curiosity and says he's trying to figure out what it means to him, and Kikuchi asks him to let her know when he finds out. Later, Mizusawa intercepts Tomozaki and tells him he knows there was an awkward moment with Minami and that he should intervene. Mizusawa takes them both out for lunch. During lunch, Mimimi asks Tomozaki to continue treating her the same way he did before the confession, as it feels strange to be avoiding each other. Hinami, Mizusawa, and Tama join them. While they're eating, Oi asks Mizusawa if people have asked whether he and Mimimi are in a relationship. Mizusawa confirms they'd make a good couple, which shifts the focus to Tomozaki. Hanami asks if he has someone in mind making Minami uncomfortable, which Tama notices. Mizusawa responds for Tomozaki, saying he was talking to several girls at the festival, which makes Minami even more nervous. At the end of the day, Tomozaki reads Kikuchi's bookcase and meets with her, saying it turned out well and gave him a similar impression as when he first read it. Kikuchi confesses that her characters became too simple compared to how they were, so Tomozaki suggests returning them to their original complexity to make it more exciting. However, the protagonist still needs to choose between Nanami and Kikuchi. The next day, Hinami tells Tomozaki that Nanami mentioned she confessed her feelings to him. Hinami assumes that Tomozaki will now want to complete the tasks with Kikuchi as he might have achieved his goal with Mimimi. However, Tomozaki can still complete each task with her, as he likes to progress through levels one at a time. During class, the students vote on who will play the characters. Mizusawa, Tama, and Hinami are chosen for the main roles. After the voting, Kikuchi approaches Tomozaki to thank him for trusting her novel. However, Nanami is present and feels a bit jealous. She approaches them and asks Fumiya to meet for stand-up rehearsal. The two of them meet outside class but are so nervous they don't know how to act. Nanami hasn't decided what type of session they should have, although she mentioned she was thinking of a couple's session, which surprises Tomozaki. She then doubts how Tomozaki felt when she confessed her feelings. Fumiya responds that he felt happy but doesn't know what else to say, so he takes the opportunity to ask how she views relationships. Nanami comments that she never excelled in anything but was helped by him, especially with the situation involving Tama and Erika. After much consideration, she realizes she really likes him. However, after this new confession, she asks him to forget about it but then changes her mind and decides to leave, leaving Tomozaki alone as he had hoped to discuss the comedy act. That night, Tomozaki continues to ponder why she is special to him. The next day, Kikuchi hands Tomozaki the revised bookcase. Upon reading it, he notices several changes. For example, the character Tama plays, Chris, is someone who fears the unknown simply from being confined in the castle. Mizusawa's character, Lebret, is somewhat clumsy but has a big heart, while Hinami's character, Alchia, discovers Chris hiding with her dragon and decides to cause harm to avoid punishment, but the boy manages to stop her. After they are forgiven by the king, they become friends. However, Alchia becomes Chris a teacher, teaching her about the outside world through books, while Libra teaches her through real stories from the outside world. Chris then feels the need to learn more, and the boy says she can ask his dragon to take her there as they have great respect for their owners. After finishing the bookcase, Tomozaki praises Kikuchi for how amazing the story turned out. He particularly liked how Chris faced her fear of the outside world with Libra by her side. However, after hearing Kikuchi mention that Chris was able to add color to her gray world thanks to the boy, Fumiya begins to think that the novel may not just be a story, but a reflection of his friend's own life. Later, Kikuchi asks Tomozaki for more information about Hinami, as she feels blocked in describing her character. They decide to interview some of Hinami's former classmates. They share how she was back then, but what stands out most is that the girl mentions that Oa cared deeply for her younger sisters. Tomozaki only recalls that Hinami had one sister. Consequently, both Tomozaki and Kikuchi decide not to delve further into her personal matters. The next day, the students of class 2-2 are ready to start rehearsals for the play. The rehearsals begin, and the protagonist is somewhat nervous about being in charge of everything. Fortunately, Hinami is there to help, but she only performs a brief act as an excuse to leave the rehearsals early. Without Hinami, the students continue with the rehearsals, and by the end, both Kikuchi and Tomozaki are pleased as everything went perfectly in the first rehearsal. Kikuchi asks if she can direct the next rehearsal since Tomozaki needs to practice with Nanami. Kikuchi feels it's a great opportunity for her to start changing. The next day, while Kikuchi takes charge of the play rehearsals, Tomozaki and Mimimi begin practicing. When she arrives, she says she's ready with the bookcase and starts her act. Tomozaki asks her to stop as he hasn't read it yet. Mimimi intends to just improvise since they usually just say nonsense, but they decide to record themselves reading the monologue. She claims it's very boring, so she prefers to take a risk and improvise a normal conversation. Tomozaki, left alone, reflects on how much he enjoys being with her and imagines dating her, but is unsure of the difference between dating and being friends. At that moment, Nanami arrives with drinks for both of them as their rehearsal is finished. Seeing Tomozaki lost in thought, she asks him what's wrong as she's concerned. He thanks her for her concern and shares that they can't stop thinking about the play and Hanami. They had an interview to explore her character, but they couldn't figure out what motivates her. Nanami also ponders this and thinks they might be similar because both desire the top position to feel special but could be empty inside, which only adds to Tomozaki's doubts. The next day, Class 2-2 gathers for rehearsal. After being absent for 2 days, the protagonist returns but notices little progress. Mizusawa explains that Kikuchi tried to engage everyone like he did but made little headway due to her lack of experience, and the other classmates often got distracted. Additionally, Hanami was absent due to her duties with the student council. Later, Kikuchi shows Tomozaki the finished bookcase. Upon reading it, Tomozaki realizes it reflects what he felt in the rehearsal room. Chris, after seeing the outside world, realizes it's very different from the life she was used to, so after the dragon's upbringing ends, she leaves the castle, finds a job in the outside world, and starts a new life, making her friends happy for her. When Tomozaki sees Kikuchi again, he tells her he liked it but is curious about why the story ends with Chris choosing to live alone in the city. Kikuchi explains that she wanted Chris to explore more the outside world and meet more people besides Libra and Alcia, but she based it on herself and Hanami because she wished to be like them and change. Although Tomozaki understands this, he asks her to save those scenes for later. At rehearsal time, everyone starts asking questions that overwhelm Kikuchi, but luckily Hanami is there to help. Seeing this, Kikuchi starts to impose order. The protagonist notices she's trying to act like Aoi. Mizusawa, who is next to him, asks what's wrong, and Tomozaki explains that the play's author wants to be her ideal self, so she wants to change to make more friends. Mizusawa finds it extraordinary that she wants to do this on her own rather than for others. However, Mizusawa points out that although both are trying to change, their ideal selves are very different. He's changing to become a better version of himself, while Kikuchi is changing to fit an ideal world. Kikuchi confirms this and says she wants to be something like Hanami, as she is the ideal girl for the world. That night, Tomozaki can't stop thinking about Kikuchi. Although he plays the game of life as a player, his companion seems to be living it as if telling the story of her life and trying to be like Hanami. He still can't figure out what's going on in her mind. At that moment, he recalls the story Kikuchi always mentions. After reading it in full, Fumiya now thinks he has an idea of what she's thinking. The next day, Tomozaki returns to class and tells Kikuchi that he read the book she likes. He mentions that he enjoyed it a lot but was particularly struck by the presence of the fire people, which leaves Kikuchi speechless. The story describes how the protagonist, Popora, makes friends through the power of words, though not the fire people. Kikuchi wished to be like the protagonist, but as the author, she felt she should get along with everyone. Seeing how Kikuchi came to the conclusion that the story should end this way and watching her try to blend in with others, Tomozaki feels the need to help her. He suggests that she should see the world from her own perspective. She admits she doesn't know her goals since everything around her seems gray. Tomozaki shows her that this isn't true by pointing out that she likes novels by the author Andy, which means she can connect with people who share her interests. He shows her an app where she can talk to others who also enjoy those stories, emphasizing that it's not necessary to fit in everywhere and with everyone. Although he and Hanami manage to fit in with their classmates, it doesn't mean Kikuchi has to do the same if she feels uncomfortable. She realizes that despite meeting many people, there are both sweet and acidic personalities, but only one person really got to know her, and that's Hanami, who knew her long before she became who she is today. The next morning, Kikuchi tells Tomozaki that she changed the ending of the script again. Tomozaki likes the new ending very much. While they are talking, Nanami is nearby, feeling a bit jealous seeing them together. However, Fumiya is pleased with Kikuchi's changes, though he tells her he wants to talk to her after the festival, which surprises her. In the classroom, Mimimi asks Tomozaki if the rehearsals and issues with the bookcase are finally over, as it's now time to practice with her for the show. Tomozaki agrees. After several days of rehearsal, the day of the school festival finally arrives. Before meeting up with the other students, Inami asks the protagonist if he has decided who to be with according to his feelings, and he confirms that he has. After the class takes a group photo, the students are ready to start the festival. When Mizusawa and Tomozaki are together, Narita shows up with the two girls who had been talking at their school. Mizusawa wastes no time and starts talking to them again, but when Tomozaki tries to join in, Nanami arrives and notices the young man is surrounded by several girls. Tomozaki tells his co-worker that they are about to perform a comedy act, but Narita quickly confesses that Fumiya was flirting at their school, which makes Mimi jealous. Tomozaki changes the subject and decides to do one last rehearsal before the show. When it's time, Tomozaki and Nanami prepare to go on stage, but Tomozaki feels very nervous. Nanami encourages him to lift his spirits, reminding him that no one has faith in them, which doesn't help much, but they manage to support each other. On stage, everything starts well, but Tomozaki forgets his lines for a moment and freezes, unsure of what to say. Nanami steps in to help by improvising, allowing them to continue the show perfectly. Afterwards, they are both happy with their performance as it went very well and they were able to understand each other. However, it's time for the play to begin, so Tomozaki must return. Then Ami feels a bit sad but still wishes him luck. Before he leaves, the protagonist tries to say something to her, but she interrupts him to avoid being late. She is left alone on the rooftop saying that it's all over. Meanwhile, her friends are ready to go on stage.